Picture this, you're in the middle of a tough Pokemon battle. Instead of going for something flashy like Flamethrower or Hyper Beam, use Toxic. Not the regular poison, but the one that gets worse every turn. At first it barely makes a dent, but as the turns go, the damage starts to ramp up. Each turn hits harder than the last, until eventually your opponent's health bar is dropping fast. And all you did was apply one status effect early on. That's compound interest. It works the same way. Progress starts off slow, almost unnoticeable, but the longer you stick with it, the more it stacks. Your money earns a little interest, then that interest earns interest, and over time it snowballs into something powerful. It's not immediate and it's not dramatic, but it's incredibly effective. And yes, I know, it's a little ironic to call something toxic a good thing. Normally we're trying to cut out toxic habits, toxic jobs, toxic relationships, but in this case, toxic is the win condition. Because when it comes to growing wealth over time, consistency beats intensity. If you're not into high-risk investing or trying to game the system, compound interest is your passive strategy. It's your damage over time mechanic. The earlier you apply it, and the longer you let it run, the more heavy lifting it does for you. Now in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how compound interest works, why starting early matters, even if you're only investing just a small amount, and how it makes part of the long-term strategy without needing to constantly monitor the market. Let's get into it. For a long time, I thought investing was only for people who were already rich. Like, you had to have thousands of dollars sitting around just to get into the game. I thought it was about picking the perfect stock, timing the market, or somehow knowing more than anyone else. And in compound interest, that sounded like one of those buzzwords people threw around on finance Twitter. Not something that could actually help me. But the moment it clicked was when I saw this simple graph. It showed two people. One started investing $100 a month at 25, and the other started at 35. Same monthly amounts, same contributions over time, but the younger investors ended up with way more money at retirement, all because they started earlier. That was my Professor Oak handing you your Pokedex moment. It wasn't about how much money you had, it was about how long you let it grow. Compound interest. That's what it was. I realized it was less about having a high-level Pokemon and more about how early you started leveling it. You could have a Magikarp now, but if you're consistent, that thing turns to a Gyarados by late game. And the best part, you don't need to be an expert trainer. You just need to get into the battle early and keep showing up. Once that clicked, I stopped waiting for the right time to start investing. I set up an automatic contributions like $50 a month and let it run in the background. It wasn't flashy, and honestly it felt like throwing a poison sting and walking away. But over time I started to see it work. The balance slowly started ticking up, dividends started reinvesting, and those small gains began to stack. That's when I realized I didn't need to one-shot my financial goals with some hyper-ream aggressive move. I just needed to get compound interest on the early board. I needed to set it up as a status effect. It takes a few turns to show, but once it kicks in, it's pretty game-changing. So here's what's really happening when we talk about compound interest and why it's such a cheat code. Let's say you invest $100. That money earns a return, maybe 7% in a good year. So after 1 year, you got $107. Cool, but here's the key. Next year, you're not just earning 7% on the original $100, you're earning it on the full $107. So now the growth applies to the growth. It's like using a move that doesn't just hit once, it keeps stacking every turn. Not only that, but the damage itself starts getting stronger because it's building on the effect of the previous turn. That's compound interest. It's exponential. The longer it runs, the harder it hits. Now let's bring it back to Pokemon for a second. You ever use Leech Seed or Toxic and just stall the battle with leftovers equipped? You're not throwing out big attacks, you're just letting your setup do the work. That's what happens when you give compound interest enough time. It starts to feel like the battle is winning itself. Now, a lot of people hear interest and think of a bank savings account that pays you 0.01%. That's not what we're talking about here. Compound interest works best when you're investing, like in a Roth IRA, where your money is exposed to the market and it could grow realistically on average 6 to 8% per year over the long run. Keyword, long run. And just like that in a Pokemon battle, the real power comes from consistency. You don't throw out Leech Seed and switch right after. You stay in the fight. You keep the effect active. That's what consistency does, specifically in investing. Keeps that stacking effect going turn after turn. So whether you're putting $20 a week or $200 a month, what matters most is starting early and staying in, because with compound interest, time is your best stat. It's the XP boost. The longer you play, the more broken the effect becomes. Here's where it gets wild. Let's say you invest $100 a month starting at age 25. That's $25 a week. If you get an average return of 7% a year, by the time you're 65, you'll have over $240,000. And here's the crazy part. Only $48,000 of that money is money that you actually put in. The rest is growth. That's compound interest doing the heavy lifting. By the late game, your money is basically soloing the boss fight while you're sitting back with your arms crossed. But if you wait until age 35, you'll still grow your money, but your final number drops to about $120,000. The same amount, same return just 10 years later, and you end up with just half as much. That's the power of time. You're not getting punished for starting small, you're getting rewarded for starting early. It's kind of like raising a Pokemon from level 5 versus catching one at level 30. Sure, they both work, but the one you train from scratch has better stats, stronger bonds, and way more experience. That's compound interest, and that's what it feels like by the time you hit your 40s and 50s. Your early contributions, the one that felt tiny at the time, are putting in the work. And the best part, you don't need to constantly check in. You don't need to beat the market. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay in the fight. Keep investing. Keep letting time do its thing. If you're consistent, even with small amounts, compound interest starts to feel like a financial status effect that never wears off. It just gets stronger with every turn. So yeah, compound interest isn't a quick win. It's not a lottery ticket or a high damage crit. It's a strategy move, a quiet effect that gets more powerful the longer it stays in play. And that's exactly why it works. Most people want results right now. They skip over tools like this because it feels too slow. But if you give it time, compound interest will do its thing, and no short-term strategy could. Here's a real-life version. Start while you can. If that's $20 a week, cool. If it's $200 a month, even better. The key is to start and stay in. Automate your contributions if you can. Pick a diversified investment account like a Roth IRA or basic index fund portfolio and let it run. You don't have to do anything fancy, you just need to let it tick. And if you're hearing this and thinking, man, I wish I started off earlier. I hear you. I felt the same way too, but here's the thing. The best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is literally right now. Even if you're a little late to the party, the interest can carry you through the end game, especially if you stay consistent from here on out. We live in a world that rewards urgency, but wealth is built with patience. You don't need to sprint. You need to survive long enough to let those stats build. Compound interest does that, turn by turn, year by year. And look, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just someone who grew up not knowing any of this stuff and learned it slow. But once I understood how compound interest works, and it changed the way I thought about money, time, and what it means to play the long game. So now I'm passing that knowledge on to you, trainer to trainer. If this helped you think differently about money or gave you a new way to look into investing, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what your version of toxic is. What's the thing you're doing now, little by little, that you know will pay off in the long run? Maybe it's investing, maybe it's paying off debt, maybe it's just learning how all this stuff works. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.